Welcome, grade 9 learners and grade 9 educators. My name is Linda Hackner and I represent the Cape Town Holocaust and Genocide Centre. We are bringing to you the grade 9 CAPS curriculum dealing with the failure of the Weimar, the rise of Nazi Germany, the outbreak of World War II, Holocaust, people's experiences, and rescue and resistance. Today, we're starting with the rise of Nazi Germany as a racial state. And as you can see, I've written there part 1 because we are going to take it quite slowly and in short units. So I've broken it up. Grade 9's Nazi Germany was a racist state from 1933 to 1945. And that is actually only 12 years, which historically is not a very long time. But within those 12 years, they were responsible for a Second World War, which took place between 1939 and 1945. And they were responsible for a genocide known as the Holocaust. So what was the Holocaust? The Holocaust was the planned and systematic mass murder of 6 million Jewish people, 2/3 of European Jewish people, by the Nazi government and their collaborators during World War II. The Holocaust is a Greek word, holo meaning complete and kaustos meaning burning. This was not the only genocide perpetrated by the Nazis. They also perpetrated a genocide against the Roma and Sinti, which is termed by the Roma and Sinti the porajmos, and 250,000 and between 250,000 and 500,000 Roma and Sinti were murdered by the Nazis. Now, I've been using the word genocide quite freely, and I'd like to just unpack the word for you. A genocide means the deliberate and systematic destruction of a group of people because of their ethnicity, nationality, religion, or race. A genocide always has the backing of the government of the day, always, whether that backing is overt, which means you know the government is backing it, or covert, which means it's hidden. The word genocide, you might be interested to know, did not exist until 1945. There was no such word. Didn't mean genocides didn't happen, just meant we didn't have a word for it. And the word was coined or invented by Raphael Lemkin, a Polish Jewish lawyer, who took 2 languages, Greek and Latin, and married words from those 2 languages, genos from the Greek, meaning race or tribe, and side from Latin, meaning killing. So we have the word genocide, and this word was first used during the Nuremberg trials after World War II. Now, I'm going to put some words on the screen, grade 9, and I want you to look at them as they bounce onto the screen. We've got ethnicity, race, gender, socioeconomic status, age, religion, health, occupation, marital status, and then I've put other because there are things like sexuality that you might like to think about in terms of yourself, or any other way in which you identify yourself I want you to think about, or in which you identify others. Socioeconomic means where you sit on the scale of economy in a country. Are you one of the top earners, middle, lower middle, or lower earners? So that's what your socioeconomic status means. So now, looking at those words, I want you to think about what in these traits, whether it's age or race or religion or health, what is the most important trait to you? How do you identify yourself? If I had to ask you to think about yourself and then look at those words and choose the 3 or 2 that are most important to you as a person, might it be your gender? Might it be your religion? Might it be your race? Whatever it is that you want to, how you want to identify yourself. And then I want you to think about what you use to identify other people. So when somebody's walking down the street towards you, you don't know them, but they might be dressed in a certain way. They might walk in a certain way. They might look a certain way. They might be behaving in a certain way. Which ones of those things do you use to identify that person and put them into sort of a box, if you know what I mean? And then what do you think other people use to identify you? What do you think if you were walking down the street towards me, what do you think are the first things I would identify about you? I want you to think about that, because as human beings, it's what we do. We look at people, and this is something that we do. We look at people, and very often, without even knowing the people, we prejudge them based on things, traits that we look at and things that we identify. And then we don't even know any facts about that person. We know nothing about them. We just see a certain look or a certain style or a certain race or a certain age or a certain gender. And then we put all those things together, wrap that person up and say, oh, I know about you because you belong to this group. You belong to that group. So we don't have to talk to them because we can tick certain boxes about people who look like that or walk like that or who has that sexuality. That's known as prejudice, making judgments about people before you've even gotten to know them. Then we take it a step further, because then we apply these prejudices to an entire group of that kind of person. So we can decide that, oh, all people of that sort are this, or are capable of that, or behave in a certain way. And that is called stereotyping. And sadly, we do this in our country very, very often, particularly with people who come from other parts of Africa. We'll say all people who come from that part of Africa are this, or are that, or are drug dealers, or are whatever it is. We decide that a certain group is like that without getting to know the people, without making any attempts to find out about those people. We just stereotype. Then grade 9, that leads to something else, and it leads to something called scapegoating. So what's a scapegoat? A scapegoat is a person, or in many cases, and most cases indeed, a group of people who get blamed for someone else's mistake or wrongdoing. So you will, for instance, use perhaps people from other countries in Africa as a scapegoat, blaming them for things that they may not have done, or things that they have done, but then you put another spin on it instead of taking responsibility for one's own action. People often create scapegoats because they're unable to understand the cause of a misfortune or a problem. Having a scapegoat does another thing. It provides a group with a sense of being united against another group. So we are the in-group, they are the out-group, and we can behave towards them in whichever way we like, because we're together in this and we're strong against them. It's us against them. And of course, that leads to dehumanization, grade 9, because if you've got a group that you've scapegoated, then you've assigned to them certain traits, certain behaviors, certain personalities that are less than attractive, because otherwise, if they were nice, you wouldn't want to scapegoat them. And so you can dehumanize, take away their humanity. And if you've taken away someone's humanity, then you can treat them in a way that you wouldn't want to be treated. And scapegoating is very useful for leaders. Leaders often use scapegoating to rally groups to their side. I am a leader and I'll show you what the problem is with that group. Or I'll let you know why that group causes our issues, etc. So it's a very useful tool. And in Nazi Germany, as with most governments, but particularly with the Nazis, Their scapegoating was tied up with ideologies of race, racist ideologies. Now, grade 11, I've used the word race, and race is, you know, despite the fact that it's been scientifically proved that all human beings have the same, or 99.9% the same DNA, that beneath the skin we are exactly the same biologically, that we can share blood, that we can share children, that there is really, race is not a scientifically proven, there is no race, except there is race, and there is racism because human beings give it legs, give it meaning, give it significance. So the Nazis were racists. There are racists in our country today, people who will look at another person, and because of the way they look, they will apply certain characteristics to them. And all racists have certain things in common. All racists will believe that race, your race, determines what you are capable of. Human capacities. My race would be, say racists, I'm not saying this me, but racists believe that their group is superior, better than, and can do more than the other group. They believe that a certain race is inherently, inside, superior to the other race. So one race is superior, one race is inferior. And that because of this, individuals need to be treated differently because they have to be treated according to what their racial classification is. Now, we know this from South Africa. We know that this is what happened in South Africa, and sadly, in some cases, still happens. But in Nazi Germany, while South Africa was very specific about skin color, Nazi Germany had a different view of race because they saw race in terms of your blood. Now, obviously, you can't see blood, but they believed that within your blood was contained your moral character, who you were, if you were a good human or not a good human. Your culture, if you were a good German or not a good German, and your national spirit, if you were for the country or against the country. This is what existed in your blood. And if you were a good German, a good so-called Aryan, then you had good, pure blood that could be traced back 3 generations. However, some people did not have good German blood, according to the Nazis. So while their blood was superior, they believed that certain people's blood was inferior. So Jews, top of the list, had the worst blood. Their blood had bacteria in it, according to the Nazis. The Roma and Sinti, the Nazis said, well, they were criminals. They had criminal blood. So it doesn't matter what they tried to do. They were in the end going to all be thieves. The people of color had impure blood, which could not be allowed to infect so-called pure German blood. And the disabled had diseased blood. So, grade 9s, I need you to understand that for the Nazis, they believed that it was in your blood, which is why, although there were Jewish people in Germany who looked like everybody else, many had blonde hair and blue eyes, many looked like their neighbors. So for the Germans, it wasn't necessarily about skin color, it was about your blood. However, those people who had darker skins, well, that was just because their blood was impure, according to the Nazis. So I just want you to try and get your head around that. And so when I meet you again in the next unit, we're going to unpack these ideas of Nazi ideology and how it gets implemented a little bit further. So until then, grade 9s, learners and teachers, educators, I'd like to say thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in Unit 3. Bye-bye.